Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. From Eden to eternity, the Bible tells one big story of redemption. My name is Tiffany, and I want to spend a few minutes with you every day walking through the Bible chronologically. Together, we will explore God's sovereign plan as the events of Scripture unfold and point to Jesus. Hey friends, Tiffany here. Welcome back to our Year in the Bible podcast from Eden to eternity. Today, we finish the book of Genesis as we look at chapters 47 through 50. Once again, we come to some chapters where we rapidly move from scene to scene. As this book draws to a close, we are reminded once again that God keeps his promises. The nation of Israel had a long wait ahead of them, but they had a faithful God to serve and trust. As chapter 47 begins, Pharaoh welcomes Jacob and his family to the land of Egypt and grants them the land of Goshen. We see how far Jacob has come in his faith journey as he stands before Pharaoh and states that his pilgrimage on the earth had been 130 years thus far. But these years have been few and hard. This language used by Jacob signals his understanding that man's time on earth is fleeting, and Jacob's personal pilgrimage is nearing the time when he would meet the Lord. But Jacob still had 17 years with his family in Goshen. We can only imagine all the memories he pondered in this time, but one thing is clear: he began to claim the promises of God as his own. As he nears his death, Jacob calls for Joseph. Following the traditional and cultural oath process of placing a hand under the thigh, Jacob makes Joseph promise that he will bury Jacob in the land of his fathers. Though it has been a long and bumpy ride, Jacob finally accepted that God's promises had indeed passed to him. His heart longed to be buried with his people in the land of promise. Before his death, Jacob blesses Joseph's two sons. In chapter 48, we read a brief version of Jacob's testimony. He shares his encounter with the Lord at Luz, also known as Bethel, and then recalls the promises to Joseph's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Now, sometimes you may hear it pronounced Ephraim or Ephraim. We're going to go with Ephraim from now on. And so Jacob claims these sons as his own, and Manasseh and Ephraim receive blessings from Jacob. As we walk through Scripture, we will see that these two men make up two of the tribes of Israel. Jacob's testimony concerning the Lord's work in his life continues as he blesses Joseph's sons. Jacob beautifully states in Genesis 48, verses 15 through 16, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, may he bless these boys." Jacob claims the Lord as his shepherd and redeemer. No longer was God just the God of his father Isaac. God was his God as well. As this blessing unfolds, we yet again see that the younger son receives the greater blessing. God continually reminds his people and us that he is not bound by cultural norms. Ephraim and Manasseh would both be great, but as they reached the promised land, we will see how Ephraim is greater over time. Jacob now turns this time of blessing to the rest of his sons in chapter 49. At first glance, these seem like rather odd blessings, or not blessings at all, really. In fact, they serve more as a prophecy concerning the tribes that would come from each of these sons. We're going to take just a few minutes to unpack each one and set the stage for our future study of each of them. But first, Jacob says in Genesis 49:2, "Come together and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to your father Israel." Jacob used both of his names in this final address to his sons. We see that he was both the sinner, Jacob, and the redeemed, Israel. He was the father of these 12 sons and the patriarch of a nation. These words for his sons were from the Lord. He begins with Reuben. Reuben had sinned greatly against his father, and here he is told that his people would not excel. As scripture unfolds, we will see that Reuben had no judge, prophet, or king come from its line. They would go from being the first to the last. Simeon and Levi are grouped together due to their violence against the city of Shechem. One is cursed, while the other, though cursed in one way, is blessed in another. The tribe of Simeon will enter the promised land as the smallest, and over time, the tribe of Judah will swallow up their land and their people. The tribe of Levi will be blessed as the priestly tribe, but they will receive no land as an inheritance. The greatest blessing falls on the tribe of Judah. Though Judah had failed in many ways, he had redeemed himself by doing right by Tamar in the end, taking care of Benjamin, and taking on a leadership role within his family. Judah's life and God's use of this tribe is a beautiful picture of grace. King David and ultimately King Jesus will come through this royal tribe, and the scepter will never depart as King Jesus sits on the throne eternally. The tribe of Zebulun received a beautiful plot of land in the Promised Land. To the west, they could see the Mediterranean Sea, and to the east was the Sea of Galilee. Issachar was eventually the third largest tribe, but they were often conquered due to their laziness. Dan is the tribe that Samson, a future judge of Israel, came from. Sadly, they are also known as the tribe that led Israel to worship idols. The tribe of Gad would be known for supplying King David with many troops. Asher's land was located on the Mediterranean Sea, and they were known for extravagant luxuries. Naphtali is the land known as Galilee. It is in this beautiful land where Jesus will do most of his teaching and ministry. We come to Joseph, who in essence had already been blessed through his two sons. He now represented two tribes of Israel through his offspring. Jacob also provides 5 names for God in this blessing to Joseph, reminding us that God is his God and this nation's God. The Lord is the mighty one of Jacob, shepherd, rock of Israel, the God of your father, and the Almighty. Lastly, Benjamin is blessed. This tribe will be known for its intense and fierce fighting, as well as Israel's first king, Saul. Then Jacob gave his final command to return his body to the cave of Machpelah, and was gathered to his people. The outpouring of love for Jacob in Egypt was great, and Jacob was honored and respected in death by his children, who took him home to be buried in the future promised land. Though Joseph's brothers had come a long way spiritually, they still worried that Joseph would exact revenge on them after their father's death. Joseph's response is a fitting and beautiful way to wrap up Genesis. In Genesis 50, verses 19 through 20, he says, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You planned evil against me. God planned it for good to bring about the present result, the survival of many people." Throughout the lives of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we have seen them fear man and place themselves and their agendas before the Lord. But we have also seen them learn to trust God and his promises and see that everything he does is for good and ultimately his glory. Joseph clearly saw God's purpose in his life and his plan for good to fulfill his promises. Joseph's final wish was to also be taken to the promised land. He too wanted to be buried in the land of promise. For 400 years, his coffin would stand as a reminder to the Israelite people that their day of deliverance would come. God's promises don't happen overnight. He fulfills them at just the right time and in just the right way to bring about the plan of redemption, also our future restoration and his glory. Believers today are blessed to experience many of these fulfilled promises, the greatest being Jesus Christ. but we still await the fulfillment of several promises as we await Christ's return. And as we wait, we remember God is faithful. We remember not to fear. We remember we are not to follow our plan, but His. And we remember that we are on a mission to share the gospel. Thanks for joining me today. Tomorrow, we begin the book of Exodus. I will see you back here as we chat through chapters 1 through 3. Bye, friends.